Hello and welcome to General Conference 2020. We're glad to have you here today, and it's been quite a year, and we're all pushing through and kind of finding a way to make it through. But we're glad that you're a part of this today, glad you're a part of the seminars. This is a great thing that we're able to offer these virtually this year. So, and I'm excited about this topic. This is something that I have lived and experienced and very passionate about, and that is the topic of really mentoring younger musicians and developing from within your church. I'm excited about this topic. I hope that it will be helpful to you. Some of it's very practical and things that maybe you've even thought of, but maybe just a different way of thinking about it. So I'm hopeful that this will be something you enjoy today. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to first say a statement at the top here, which is basically this. Wouldn't it be great to have 2 to 3 deep on every instrument in your church? Of course, some are going to say, well, yeah, it'd be nice to have 1 deep on every instrument in my church. I understand that. Of course, it depends on the size of the church and different circumstances. But I also want us to be thinking about the fact that why can't we get that in our mindset somewhat to be thinking, man, that's the goal. Let's push toward that goal of saying that we have multiple people on each instrument. So 2 to 3 deep on everything would be amazing. And that's something that is a great goal to maybe shoot for as you develop people and as people come along. So that's just something I want us to keep in the forefront of our minds as we're going through this class today, to be thinking about that. That's always a wonderful goal and a wonderful thing to try to accomplish over time. So one area that I always talk with people about, and it's something that I do find a lot, is people get a little bit concerned about developing people outside of their area of expertise. So give you an example. Say you don't play the guitar, but you would love to develop some guitar players in your church. That is where I want to talk to you to not feel just totally handicapped where you cannot do anything there. I want you to understand here is a great thought of a way that you can maybe get around this. And this is an example that I had. A friend of mine in North Carolina a few years back, he had a really good bass player, and basically something happened. I think his job transferred, he moved, so they lost their bass player. Well, they hadn't been developing people, and so they were without a bass player. And if you've ever, always had a bass player and you don't, that's hard. That's a tough situation. It's like the bottom falls out of everything. So anyway, long story short, they were like, look, what are we going to do? Nobody here plays the bass. And I commend them for what they did. They basically said, look, we don't teach it. We don't have anybody that can help. But let's reach out to our area churches, our area UPCI churches, and see if there is someone who plays that might teach some of our young people how to play. So I know you're like, well, that's a novel thought, but at the same time, sometimes we don't do it. This church reached out to another church in their area within 20, 30 minutes of their church, and they had a really good bass player. They said, hey, have you ever taught lessons before? And if not, would you consider teaching some of our young people? We don't have any bass players. And he said, you know what, I haven't taught that much, but I would be willing. And of course, they paid him for his time, for his lessons. And over the period of 6 months, I think it was or so, they had started to develop a couple of young people, this church that had reached out originally. And anyway, it worked. It absolutely worked. And they've got 2 or 3 bass players now. And it all was from them just reaching out to someone in their area, a local church, and saying, hey, would you guys help me? Now, it's not something that they just did for free. They pay them, of course, for teaching the lessons, and as you should. And it was just a great situation. It helped the camaraderie for the churches. It was a really good thing. And long story is, that is a wonderful idea to try to do if you don't have someone in your local church that can help out. So that's just a practical thought to keep in mind and to maybe look into if you're in a situation where, like, because a lot of our music today is heavily guitar. It's got a lot of guitar influences. So if you don't have that in your church, you are missing an element that would be great to have. So try to reach out, maybe find a church that has somebody. And I think it's always best, personally. It's even better than just going to your local music store and finding someone, because the style could be different. And it's always great to find someone in the church that's already already playing and already doing those songs. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and I feel like that's something that's practical, but at the same time, we forget to look locally at our churches for help. So I want to talk a little bit about another topic now about developing people now and not waiting. Okay, so here's what I want to say about this. Basically, is I have found over time that a lot of churches will only respond or only kind of get involved with this area once there's a crisis, but they're kind of relaxed in this area until there is a big problem. What I mean by that is a lot of churches have worked, to develop a good music program. They've got great musicians and singers and everything is going well and their worship is wonderful, and that's great. I love that for you. However, I want to see, do you have any up and comers? Because here's what happens is you may have that today, but in a couple years, what if somebody's job transfers? What if somebody gets married? What if they go to college? What if all these what ifs? Well, it can very well happen and does happen. And sometimes people are back to square one and they're like, oh my goodness, our keyboard player left. Now what do we do? That shouldn't happen because you should be developing people. So that's what I want to really encourage today is let's not wait and relax, because it's super easy and it's super human nature to just, once we get a good program going, we kind of relax and just kind of go along. But I always love to go to churches and say, show me who your up and comers are. Who are the ones who are going to take this in a couple years? Who are the up and comers that you're getting ready to rotate in because they're starting to get really good? That's what I love to see, because that's a great system that constantly is feeding the program. It's constantly having new people come in, and I think that's a wonderful thing. You can't have too many people involved or too deep, in my opinion. If that's scheduled, I understand. If you have a lot, then there was a time when we had, we still have several, but we had about 6 drummers. Well, I understood that meant people only got to play maybe once a month or once every 6 weeks or something like that. But at the same time, that's still a good problem. That's still a good problem to have. So I want to just encourage you to really, really, really look into this area of trying to make sure you don't wait until you're in crisis mode. Start right now. Start right now. Start to think about, okay, let's start developing people. Even if you're thinking, well, we don't really have that big of a need at this very, very given moment. You will at some point. So, and it always pays off to keep developing people. So with that being said, here's what I would love for you to start thinking and understanding and kind of get in this mindset, is to change the culture or the nature of how you structure the system in terms of your music system. And that is, let's not just depend on our A team. Let's not just depend on the absolute best ones we have. Yes, you're going to lean on them heavily. And yes, I'm a big proponent in them probably being involved in some of your main things. I understand that. I do that as well. However, I will always put someone who's not as strong with someone who's really strong to kind of mentor them, to kind of keep that system going. That's a great way to do that, and not just kind of feature your absolute best all the time and then kind of just keep waiting and waiting and waiting on all these others to be developed. Supplement them in there. If you have 6 singers, put a strong singer with a not as strong a singer, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying put people on the platform that can't do it. I'm not saying that at all. I don't believe in that either. So, but I also think you can put someone in there that is still coming up, but it's still pretty strong and they can get there. So I have a funny story to share with you on this. Basically, I have a young guy in my church that's playing drums for us now that, and let me kind of segue into this as I say this story. One area that has really helped us in doing this is having a youth band. Okay, having a youth band and singers. Now, most churches, of course, will have a youth department, and you'll have youth services and things like that. And a lot of times they'll have their own musicians and singers, which if you do, that's wonderful. That's a great thing. But we have a youth center, we have a youth band, all those things. That is a great system, and if you don't do it already, please start it. Because here's what happens, and I'm going to get back to my story now, my funny story. I always watch the youth band. I always listen, and when they come in and they play, the youth choir will sing for service and that kind of thing. I'm listening to those young musicians, and I'm thinking, okay, so and so is getting really close. Man, they're sounding good. They're not too far away from me starting to just bring them in occasionally in the main service to kind of get them used to that. So I did this a few years ago. I heard one of the drummers, and he was really sounding great. I thought, man, he sounds excellent. I'm going to talk to him about transitioning into main service. So I did sit down and talk with him about it, and found out later that he had kind of told his friends and told the youth band that he was getting called up. to have a sports reference there, he was kind of feeling that way, which when I thought about it, I thought, you know what, it's kind of true. It is kind of the farm team. It is kind of getting called up. He was just making a reference of getting called up to the major leagues. But it was funny, but at the same time, it made me think about this. That youth band, that, they're training. They're in there, in youth center, you can make mistakes. You can kind of learn as you go. We all did, and we all have. But I just love the concept, kind of thinking of that as the training grounds and the farm team to just kind of develop and transition them into our main service. That is not a bad thing. That is a great thing to kind of have a system in place like that. Why do you think those teams have farm teams? They're training them, they're cultivating them, they're getting better and better, and they get called up. Okay, so anyway, I know it was a situation that happened to me, kind of funny, but at the same time, it really made sense to me to kind of keep that going, keep that system going. So long story short, really, really work towards having a youth band. Even if you don't have a youth band yet, if you don't have enough, get some people together that's playing for youth services. Let them jam. Come a night, come up there to a church a night a week or something, and just let them play together. Let them jam. Let them just do what they want, because that is starting that love for playing in the church, that love for playing together, and it's a great thing we've all done it, and that's something that I really am a big proponent of, letting that happen. So youth band is huge. I really hope you can do that, because it will definitely help you. Another situation I saw that I think is really cool is there was a church in Illinois that I remember. The pastor was wanting to really kind of develop their music department further, and was probably getting tired of just not having anybody. I think he actually plays, but he was needing the pastors to play all the time. So one thing he did that I thought was really, and I don't know that every church can do this, but it was really cool. He basically said, young people in my church, if you are interested in taking lessons, if you're interested in getting lessons, the church will pay for half of your lesson fees. Now that's a lot. That's a lot to take on. I'm not saying every church can do that, but what I love about it is a lot of people took him up on this. And now he didn't continue to pay for it if they didn't stick with it, if they didn't practice. He watched that pretty closely. But at the same time, it showed that church was invested in them, and it showed that church was behind them and wanted to see them grow, was even invested pretty much in that. So that was a pretty cool situation. And I will say, to this day, that church has a lot of musicians. They have a lot because they've grown up, they've played, they've trained themselves, and it's just been a really cool situation to watch that pay off for that church, and they have a lot of musicians to this day. So it's pretty cool if you want to think about that. Sometimes you may not be able to do that, but I thought that was a great idea to show someone, look, I'll even help you. We need you to get there. Let's work towards that. So anyway, wanted to share that with you. So starting a youth band, getting involved in maybe someone locally that maybe teaches, and I highly recommend that, even more so than just going to a local music store that teaches lessons, because sometimes stylistically it's not as good of a fit. And so I always recommend finding someone in a local church that would teach your young people. I think it's great, or in your local church sometimes. One other thing I wanted to mention in this whole idea is kind of, and I mentioned it I think earlier, but changing the culture, changing the mindset in terms of developing from within your church, and not always feeling like the answer is bringing someone else in. Now, I'm not against that at all. Of course, I think it's important to have a music director. I think it's very vital to have one in charge. However, I also think that that's not the fix-all for everything. I think you have to develop within your church. And one thing that our church did a few years back, and it wasn't my idea, it was my pastor's idea. I thought it was a wonderful idea, but we had a ministry fair. Okay, so they called it a ministry fair, and what they did was on a Sunday afternoon after church, they basically set up the gymnasium with all of the different departments of the church. And basically, it was an opportunity for people in our church to say, hey, I would love to be involved in such and such. I'd love to be involved in the media. I've got an interest here. And so that's what it was. We all kind of manned our different ministries there in the gymnasium. And long story short, had a guy that came by the music booth, and I knew him, but I didn't really know him. I talked to him, but I didn't really know his background. He absolutely wrote down on his paper that he was interested in playing organ. Well, I was like, great, Then I began to look at it, and it said he had played for 10 years at another church before he had moved here. I had no idea. The guy knew the number system. He was a great musician. I didn't even know he was sitting in our auditorium in services. And so I gradually kind of had him play. I listened to him play. He's actually on the schedule for this Sunday. Actually, I just saw that earlier today, and still playing in our church. And it was just a really cool thing because I didn't know it was there. I didn't know he was there. He hadn't really made it vocal. He hadn't really said much about it. And there are people like that where you may not even know. You have to be, you have to have some kind of system or proactive to find that out. Anyway, I just wanted to say that was a great thing for us. So a ministry fair, and that helped not just the music department, it helped the media, it helped the sound, it helped Sunday school, all the different areas of the church. They did, it was a great way to connect and plug people in. And that is a great way. We've done polls, and surveys to say, hey, if you'd like to be involved in the music department, let us know. If you play, if you sing, we've done that before, and that's worked as well. But this ministry fair was really, really cool, and just wanted to throw that out there as a practical idea for somebody to maybe try that in your church. And it does sometimes draw out people that you may not know about that's there. So this was an adult, of course, and so got them plugged in, and it's been a very good thing. So hopefully that will help you to give an idea. The other thing too is this. When we're talking about developing young musicians and mentoring young musicians and singers, this is very, very practical and kind of a no-brainer, but I'm going to mention it anyway. But if there are young people and kids and things up around the instruments after church, like an altar service, say they're standing over here and they're still looking at the drummer, or they're still over here just standing right by the piano and listening to you play, or that kind of thing. If they're doing that, there's an interest there. So don't negate that and just be like, oh, that's just cute. They just like music. Well, yeah, they do. Absolutely. And they're the future. So don't dismiss that. Watch for that. Look for that. Go to their parents and say, I noticed so-and-so really loves the piano or really loves the guitar, whatever it is, whatever they're always up around. Say to them, are they interested? Have you noticed if they would like to have lessons or something? Have you guys ever thought about that? Push that. Be a little bit more proactive with that, because that's going to pay off. When they have that interest there, and they do, or they wouldn't be up there, that's a prime candidate to say, that could be one of our future drummers. There's our future guitar player. And that's very true, because they are the future. So invest in young people. You may not play their instrument. You may not play that, but kind of be the one that kind of facilitates that. I think it will really help you. There's nothing more that you can do that's going to be better than saying and validating a young person like that to say, hey, I see your interest, and I think it's valuable, and I think it's something we could use in our church. That is amazing. You may go to them and they may light up because they're like, wow, they're going to give me an opportunity possibly, that kind of thing. So you're not promising them anything. You're just saying, we would love to see you develop that area in that area. So I think that's wonderful to watch for that, to look for that, and to be aware of those people that are kind of just around there, always checking out the music, always listening, always staying around. Talk to them about it. It could really, really pay off for you. So, and all of this, guys, that I'm talking about, all of this, I'm still remembering that opening statement. Wouldn't it be great to have 2 or 3 deep on everything? Okay, so I don't think that's I don't think that's not within your grasp. I really think it's possible, and it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 2 months. It's going to take some time, but you can do it. You absolutely can do it. One other area that I want to share with you is this, and this is kind of a topic that I don't know how you'll find this funny or not, but I've been to places and I've experienced some situations where I felt like there were some divas involved. And there are male divas just like there are female divas. I've seen both, but we don't like that. We shouldn't have that in the church, but I have seen it creep in. And here's one area that I find can fix that. is if you only have, I'm gonna pick on drummers. If you only have one drummer, if you have one drummer and they are the only drummer in your church, um, I understand that's all you have at the moment, and you need to use them. I get that. However, when that is the case, a lot of times that can be a little bit of a breeding ground for that, that kind of territorial spirit to kind of develop. It doesn't always, but it can, because it's just human nature to be like, I am the only one they have. So I can be late. I'm the only one they got. So, and I don't and I'm not saying that everybody's going to have that attitude or spirit. I hope not. But at the same time, it can happen. However, you can fix that from happening by having two or three on that instrument, because then they are not the only person that plays the drums. There are others that can play, and then you have a schedule. And that's another wonderful thing. When you can schedule people out and they're not always on the instruments, that's a great thing, because they feel that camaraderie with other musicians. They're not the only one. It kind of breaks that whole territorial thing, and it just works. It absolutely works. And so if you are kind of fighting that a little bit in terms of someone that's just kind of felt like, well, this is my domain, I'm the only one they have, and I'm kind of, in a good position here, you can fix that, and you can get rid of that by developing someone else. And not, you don't even have to take them off of playing, but you can put them on a rotation where they feel like, wow, there are others that play in our church now. So it's a wonderful thing. That's why I'm saying the more the merrier. The more two or three deep on everything, having a schedule, even if they don't play for 2 or 3 weeks, that's not a bad thing. If you have enough players for that. So that's a great aspect. I know that's kind of a no-brainer. That's probably something you've already thought about, but it really does fix that situation if you do have that arise in your church. So anyway, I wrote down in my notes, the pros and cons. The pros and cons of creating, this system to where you have multiple people coming up. I couldn't come up with any cons. I really couldn't. It's just a win-win situation in every aspect. And I know I may make it try to seem much easier than what it is. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to give you some practical thoughts and ideas of how to develop and mentor young musicians. And it doesn't always have to be young, but I have found that the younger generation, younger people have more time. They'll put in more time sometimes. And so it does work well with that, I've always found. So I just hope this has helped you today. It's nothing earth-shattering that you probably haven't thought of, but I think it's worth it. I think sometimes we settle, we kind of get into a rut. We've all done it, and where it's just like, well, we're getting by, it's working, but I really hate for you to get to that place where you're back to square one and you're having to kind of start from ground zero when there's really nobody left and you haven't developed people. So if I was to come visit your church, I would love to say, who are your up-and-comers? Let me see who are those ones that are going to be playing here in a couple years. So those should be in development. They should be in the youth band. They should be all around the church. My wife and I do something, and we don't do it enough probably, but we try to do this a lot. We try to feature our young people with specials. If they play the piano, I'll have them play an instrumental. If they're a singer, whatever that is, I'll have them come into the main service. Let them play for the offering song. Let them do whatever it is to develop that love for the church, that love for playing in the main auditorium. It just it's a win-win. It really, really works. If you hear someone playing a song for recital and you're like, wow, they could do that as a special, absolutely. Put them on the schedule. That's a great thing. It just is a good idea to start to develop that culture where your 8-year-olds are looking at your 13-year-olds because your 13-year-olds are starting to be used in the services, and your 13-year-olds are looking to the 18, that kind of system. It's just a constant getting called up, and so it really is a great thing. I'm not saying that we have it, perfected it by any means, but at the same time, I love the fact that we can look and see generational musicians coming up, and it's not just all adults. There's not just all one generation. It's great to have a mixture of that. I really, really believe that. And I'm excited to see we're in good hands. I'll put it that way. Our younger generation of musicians is unbelievable. So, but let's invest in them. Let's not relax. and let's not get too comfortable, because we want to continue to develop that next generation and mentor them. So I hope you've enjoyed this today. I hope it's been helpful, and I hope you can use this and apply this in your situation. And I hope it's been helpful. Thank you so much, and God bless.